everybody, and welcome to the 25th episode of Against All Odds. Wow, we've reached a milestone. So today I'm joined by an amazing couple, Tony and Nicki Vee. Now, these have a super strong relationship and they are helping thousands and thousands of other couples to have amazing relationships. It's all about masculine and feminine, not one to miss. Make sure you watch it all and make sure you subscribe to the channel as well.
It's okay. It's okay. Yes, we're really good, thank you. And in sunny, no, not sunny Birmingham at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the summer this year.
And we're very excited to have you invite us, because I love the fact that you call it Against All Odds.
Yes.
Because obviously relationships is our thing. And actually, I think that we have set the way that we have relationships up against the odds of being successful, which is quite interesting, based on the fact that there is no education. It's not included in the education system at all. And yet it's probably like, it could be definitely up for me. It's at the top of the list of things that are important in life, but it somehow didn't get on the curriculum, which is a bit bizarre, really, as did things like child, how do you bring up a child is left off as well. So these are important areas of life. So it's great that you've asked us on so we can share some wisdom on the subject, I guess.
Yes.
You're like pros in this area, and a lot of people, I've seen a lot of relationship problems with the people around me. And like I said before the podcast, I've had a lot of people on with mindset, nutrition, fitness, but we were lacking like relationship advice. And you only have to look around, and like divorce rates are shooting up. People aren't getting married now. Everything's like we're completely out of balance. So you pair like our so needed on this podcast. Why do you think, and this is probably a big topic, but why do you think people are struggling at the moment?
Right in the deep end. Right. I think
that's the best place to start.
We always really say, look, we've only got an hour. We talk about this for weeks, But I think that, look, the key thing is that there are two key things that we have zero understanding of. So we sort of get into relationships without any tools, and then we do the best we can. And when it goes wrong, we have no way of knowing what to do to put it right. So some people end up, like you say, getting divorced, and others muddle along. They literally, and obviously the divorce laws changed in the late 1990s. Before that, there was very few divorces and a lot of muddling along. So people, I always say they're sharing, a house, but they're living two separate lives. And that's not what we got into a relationship for, you know. And then obviously the 90s changed everything, and people got, what they sort of termed quickie divorces. And, they ended up at its peak. It has gone down a little bit, but like 50% of the people that got married getting divorced. And now in today's world, we've got a lot of same-sex marriages. So stats are sort of beginning to come through with that. And they're proving to be slightly worse, not slightly better, which is another. So it's another area that you go, but the problems are the same. So what are the problems? So I better say something. She always says, God,
I've never said that's quiet for that long in my whole life before. No, I think, just to give you a bit of background is that, Tony and I met in personal development, of course. And I'd been a business coach, corporate coach for a long time. Tony had been coaching entrepreneurs in their businesses. And, we met and we got together, which is a very long story, which I won't bore you with. But some of it is about actually sharing a room by accident. It's a story for another time. So what happened was we got married very quickly because both of us have had marriages before. And I sort of find it ironic because I used to say, I'm really good at most things, a bit like you said, Amy, like, I was really into health and fitness and, I was doing really well in business or in coaching. And I went, but I'm crap at relationships because, as Tony said, I didn't understand. And so I worked a lot on myself and did a lot of learning about the way that relationships work. And therefore, then when we got married, we had a load of personal development people there. And Judy May Murphy, I don't know whether you've ever come across her. She's super. She teaches how to get in the media and stuff. She was at our wedding and said, would I come to Ireland to speak to her group, you know? And I sort of said, well, you know, what do you want me to talk about? And she went, oh, no, I want you and Tony to come to talk about your relationship. So since then, we've been relationship coaches. And I find that ironic when I used to be so bad at it. But at least we know what not to do. At least we know what not to do.
Yeah.
When we were going over to Ireland to do this talk, we decided we'd just sort of, you know, we don't smoke, but back of a fag packet, like bit of a scrappy bit of paper kind of thing, what we're going to talk about. And we talked about these two main things, these two things that are so important to make a relationship work. And we've never changed that philosophy ever, not in 20 odd years, even though some people have gone, oh, that's the difficult part and all that sort of thing. And so if I just do you do the first one because that's your baby.
We're
So
doing
the
that.
first one we talked about on the plane was this. And this is what people have asked us to go and speak about, what they call the sexy stuff, you know, differences between men and women and all that. And we go, no. We're sorry, we can't. With all integrity, we need to tell you about this first thing, that we know that if you don't get this part right, you can never make a relationship work.
Yeah. So the first thing is that, obviously, having done this for so long, you know, over the years we get phone calls. We've had 2 phone calls this week, even though we've retired. And well, semi-retired, really. We have to say semi-retired because people. No, but anyway, that was our intention. But anyway, look. So when they phone up, the same thing basically happens every time, and the person who's rung us up always starts talking about the other person. They never talk about themselves. So the sort of irony is that we tend to think en masse that the other person is the problem, and we don't look at ourselves. So because we come from personal development, our change in our relationship results came from looking at ourselves, not by trying to, you know, get the other person to run their life the way we want them to run it. Because the problem is, you know, it's sort of, we've often said, look, if you were a bit more like me, this whole thing would go a lot better. Yeah. And of course, but the other person is saying the same thing. Yeah. So that's the sort of where we get into this stuckness, and a gap between us starts to grow. And as it starts to grow, you know, we get into the blame game, you know, which is, you know, it's your fault. And then the other person, of course, doesn't want it to be their fault. So they go, no, it's your fault, you know, and the gap grows bigger till something breaks. Yeah.
And of course, this is the same for whether people are married or not, you know, not married doesn't make any difference. You know, what they tend to do nowadays as well is just to break up and then basically go, well, let me find someone else. Not necessarily. And one of the things that we do when we're coaching people is we say, tell us about your previous relationships. And then they'll tell us all about it and how, you know, how this other person was not great and blah, blah, blah. And then we're going, you know, like, who was the common denominator here? And of course, it is you, which is why this whole philosophy is based on the beginning, which is the hardest thing for people to do, is to look at themselves.
It's the most difficult thing is to look at you. But if, as you watch this today, you know, just have, I always call it, just have an open mind and an open heart. Because if you get the realization that we were blessed to get, and when we started to learn this, obviously we've made it into a nice model and it's easy to follow and what have you, then you could change everything just by listening to this little bit. Okay, because at least you'll have a opportunity to have a breakthrough, realization, light bulb moment, whatever you want to call it, and go, oh my God, I'd never thought of it like that. So here's how I sort of say it. I always say, look, the thing is that you know, we have to realize there's, in each of us, there's 2 of you. So there's 2 of us in every human, and there's sort of like these 2 parts of us. Sometimes we're not drinking, so I don't have bottles of wine. I normally use 2 bottles of wine, you know. So I go, look, I get a bottle of champagne and go, here's a bottle of fizzy wine, and here's a bottle of still wine. you know, what's the real difference? Well, the difference is that if you shake a bottle of champagne like they do at the Formula One racing and then pop the top off, it goes absolutely everywhere. Whereas the still wine, you could shake that as much as you like, open the top, and it's nothing's going to happen. It's going to stay still. So there's this part of you that's like the champagne. It's sort of like when you get shaken up by your partner or situations or
life,
circumstances,
stress, everything.
Yeah.
Outside of you, you sort of pop a little bit like this champagne. And when you do that, and you know this as a brain expert, you activate, you know, parts of you that put you in fight and flight mode. Now,
Yeah.
the stats I have, you as an expert more than me, will possibly know that huge amounts of people today, because of, you know, the world that humans have created, not blaming anyone, it's just an evolution that we've arrived in. And look, I always say, how blessed are we to live, you know, in the Western world? I mean, God, we could live in a lot of worse places, but we still have a good moan. But, you know, we are living in a place of stress without knowing that we're doing that. And that sort of become normalized. So the people walking around the street are walking around stressed, but not realizing that they're stressed. And in that state, of course, they are full of chemicals and hormones that make them very reactive. And we know those as cortisol and adrenaline, really. Now, that part of you is always going to struggle to have a relationship. But the problem is, it's around, it's said in my stats, between 95 and 96% of people are walking around like that, and they have no clue. So they are like the champagne, they pop all the time. And of course, they're set off by things outside of themselves, but specifically their partner. They do something they don't like, and boom, off goes the champagne cork. So that's just a part of you. So I always say to people when we're doing talks, look, how do you know if you're one of the champagne people, yeah, and you're walking around stressed? Because look, once you realize this, everything can change, because all the time you don't know what you don't know. You're not really in a place of choice. You keep fighting the game, or fighting or running away from it if it's fight or flight, you know, or hiding, as some people say. You basically play the game in that format, and that is not conducive to a great relationship. So once you know that, you put yourself in a place of choice not to do that. Now, I'm not saying that's easy. So we often say it's easy to say, but not so easy to do.
Yeah.
But having said that, you realize there's a realization. So these words are the words I always use. I always say to people, if we've got an audience, but, you know, metaphorically, put your hand up here and go, so do I know anybody that ever worries about anything? And of course, you know, in our audiences, very few people put their hand up, but you can see their face going, you know, and I always go, do you know that person very well? So, you know, and I go, look, how many people do you reckon? There's 8 billion humans on planet Earth. How many of those do you reckon are worrying, you know, like right now? And I think the thing is that worry is an underlying program that's going on inside most humans that unfortunately is part of the champagne bottle. So if you're a worrier, you're going to have adrenaline and cortisol in your world, in your inner world, and that makes your outer world, particularly with your partner, more difficult. So imagine where you didn't worry about anything, how much better would it, or easier would life go? But then, of course, there's degrees of adrenaline and cortisol. They build up as we get heavier, more negative emotions. So I often say, so how many people know anyone that's is anxious about anything? Well, anxiety is a very common thing in today's world. And of course, you know, the science world, you know, we're massive fans of the National Health. They've been helping both of us in our world. You know, they fix you if you're not well. But of course, if you've got these types of problems, their number one thing to do is to give you a drug to subdue it. And having said that, because once you know that you don't need the drug, you can, we call it heal yourself, then actually that's a much better way to go about it. And what you need is information and education to learn how to do that. So, but look, it gets worse than that, because I often say, well, who here knows anybody that's like gets frustrated about anything? Well, of course, people are walking around frustrated about everything, you know. Bless the National Health Service, they are in the firing line all the time.
Yeah.
I go, these people are amazing what they do, you know. It's incredible how kind, caring, you know, you read their mission statement, their values. I say that most of the people in it, you know, do a fantastic job. Yeah, sure, you have to wait around a bit, but you know, when you're moaning about something, you know, moaning about the National Health is actually activates your fight and flight, which is an irony, isn't it? You know, so then it can still get worse. Who knows somebody that gets angry or even depressed? And I think the current stats are nearly 20% of the British people are on prescribed antidepressants. That's how bad a system that we've ended up in. So this is our challenge, that 96% of people don't know that they're living in that champagne bottle and that they are stressed, and that this has such a detrimental effect on their relationship. They have no clue. So of course, as the relationship deteriorates and deteriorates, they get even more stressed. And if they know how to deal with this, then they're going to be stuck. So it's not when most people expect us to start. We call this, as a sort of colloquial way to look at it, as living in the red, you know. And there is a lot of ways that you can learn about not living in the red. I often say, if you're in the red, you're in your head, and your brain is releasing messages and chemicals and hormones around your body that are not serving you, and this is the problem. Now, this is where you need to love your partner, because your partner is having the same situation, you know. You know, the crazy thing is that they're not there. You know, if you don't get a person that's in the red living with somebody, you know, a bottle of champagne does not live with a bottle of, you know, still beautiful wine. They don't live together. The champagne people get together with the champagne people. And look, only 4 or 5% of people have learned how to do the opposite to this, which is, we call it live in the green. And there's a few things that you need to, you know, educate yourself with, where you suddenly realize, okay, I am living in the red. I am that champagne bottle. And you have to ask yourself the question, so what do I need to do to learn to, you know, get rid of the fizz in my body, so that I personally, you know, forget my partner for a moment, live a more stress-free life, which means you're going to live a more disease-free life as well. Remember, stress is the number one killer, because it brings on all disease. So effectively, this is such a big thing, and it's every person that we have ever helped in their relationship comes to us and they're in the red, and we identify where they are in the red. That's one of the best things. So you have to delve in it a little bit more and go, right, how far down this red world am I hanging out? Where do I live? And then what do I need to do to get me out of there? Once I realize I've got a choice, and I make the choice to not live there anymore for my own health and sanity, but also for my relationship, my children, my parents, because they all, you know, suffer from our individual redness. You know, they sort of go, look, if you're miserable, all you do is spread misery. And unfortunately, that's, you know, your partner's, you know, part of receiving your misery, but you're receiving theirs. Your kids are receiving it. Your parents, if they're still alive, are receiving it, and everyone you work with. That's why we have the society that we've got. And so it's to educate yourself on this so important subject is where we always start on healing people with relationship challenges. So that's part one.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I was just thinking, as you were speaking, that when Tony presents that, if we have, you know, lots more time kind of thing, he actually uses a metaphor. Obviously, he used the metaphor with the sparkling, you know, the fizzy wine and the still wine, or the calm wine, I like to call it. And he uses something which he talks about, being on the road of life, and he goes, you're either on the road to fear or you're on the road to love. And the reason why I'm using that to make the link between the first thing that we always talk to people about and the second is that when people are on the road to fear, that is when they're in doubt, worry, anxiety, anger, depression, and all the other, negative behaviors that, everybody's got different ones, but they're all, similar.
Yeah.
And when people are on that road to fear, they're always trying to find ways to feel better. So that might mean addictions like smoking, drinking, food, gambling, all the drugs, whatever that is, or their addiction is to being at work, or their addiction is being, sport or whatever it is. And of course, the trouble is with that in a relationship is now you've got an addicted person, right? However, even somebody who's stressed to hell from their work and they've got kids as well, and they're, having a difficult time, and, they like a drink, for example, their chemistry is not going to be conducive to being on what we call the road to love. And when we get when we talk to people, either single people, and we're asking them about their previous relationship, or even they're trying to work out why they're not getting into nice relationships and good loving relationships, we teach them that first part, because we go, look, until you understand what you're putting out, this is, my thing is all about the most difficult thing to be, it's like we were saying, looking at yourself, but the most difficult thing to accept is that you have created something, like the law of cause and effect, that instead of being an effect of your partner's behavior, that you are at cause of it, that somehow the thing that you think you're doing, which is, of course, it's understandable. Sure. People go, but surely, Tony and Nicki Vee, you understand that, when you've got 3 children, a job, and, your house mortgage to pay and everything. And we go, well, yes, of course we understand. But like, you've come to ask us what to do about this so that you don't have this part of your life give you so much pain. And we're going to say to you, whether you like it or not, you're going to need to look at you and see how you are having an impact on your partner. And as Tony said, sadly, we've worked with many, many couples where we've worked with the children as well. They might be older children or even younger children, where they're being so massively affected by what's happening between their parents, but also the children are just copying their parents. So, we sometimes, to use a bit of leverage, say, as if that first part wasn't leverage enough, we'll kind of go, so now you've become aware and accepted that this is some of the behavior you're doing that's not helpful here. Have you noticed any of that behavior in your children? And they always go, yes. And then they go very quiet, and they go, and if you're listening to this now, into Amy's podcast, look, we completely understand that until we become, we were the same, like 20 odd years ago, till you realize that how you're showing up, or what you're putting over to people, how you're being within the family or within work or wherever, you're having an impact on others in everything you do and everything you say, just with your state, just with the way you show up. So once we've sort of done that to death, as you can imagine, people are going, no more. In fact, one lady, because Tony shows roundabouts, like doubt, worry, and then he's got the roundabouts going, and there was one woman saying, no more roundabouts, I can't stand anymore. So what we then say is, look, so when you've accepted that, and you've been aware, and you've accepted, and you've gone, look, okay, so Tony and Nicki, I'm willing to look at myself, right? We say now, the other thing that we definitely believed right from the beginning of our teaching and of our sharing was that if you're in that negative state, if you're in that red in your head, having those chemicals running about, it's very, very difficult and almost impossible, we would say, to be in your natural essence as a man or a woman. So then we start talking about masculine and feminine energy. And that's why, as Tony said earlier, with same-sex couples, it's always the same, because it's like, it's the masculine and feminine energy that you're portraying. And as a woman, and we'll just talk about a heterosexual relationship because but it is the same, just so that we can explain the masculine and feminine and more easily. And we go, look, if you are in a bad state, you're either going to go as a woman. Let's just give you the example of the woman. As if you're either going to go into a state which is, because you're in your head, you're trying really hard, you're trying to fix things, you're using the left part of your brain. I'm sure you've talked about the left and right brain a lot. You're using the left part of your brain, which is the more masculine part of your brain, and therefore you're being, not to put it too gently, you're being more in your masculine. And so the impact that you have on a man can be quite, well, basically men, they're all right being challenged and being in sort of competition with another man, but they don't want that in their intimate relationship. So when a woman is behaving in a more masculine way, it's not her natural style. So even though she does it, and she may say, which, I wish I had a tenner for every time a woman said to me, but I have to be masculine at work. And I go, well, I'm a great example. I was more masculine in my corporate life than anyone I've ever met. And I managed to realize that I actually found myself more successful in my job when I did it from my feminine, because feminine power is absolutely incredible. And also feminine power has the ability to be, because it's natural, so it's easier. So the first thing we have to be is in our green space, in our loving space, in a good space, the best version of ourselves. There's a lot of people use that phrase now. And then we have to understand how to be our natural self. And the great news here, I'll go on to men in a minute, right? The great news here is we don't have to work very hard to learn how to be in our natural state, because it is our natural state. It's not like we have to learn to be feminine as women, because all we have to do is stop thinking that being left brain and being masculine and being in a not good space is going to get us what we want. So from a man's perspective, so women either go more masculine, or they'll go into what we would call a more passive aggressive, needy state. That's more rare nowadays. More women go into a more masculine state.
Yeah, so that's that. Just to clarify, then, that on the women's side of things, when they operate in from this place of stress, the red, they tend to do one of two things, and rough numbers, this is more of a guess, we have no science to, but just on experience really, is about 80% of women, when they're stressed, will turn on, because it's an emergency mode. Your feminine masculinity, because we've both got both, is an emergency mode thing. So once you've got adrenaline and cortisol in your system, which you're sort of walking around with inadvertently, you then chuck in a little bit of testosterone as well, and then you've got a woman who's now operating from her emergency mode on two fronts. But 20% will become more what we call passively aggressive, and that's a very difficult thing to deal with as a man. Both of these things, from a man's viewpoint, are a nightmare to deal with. They don't know how to deal with them. That all they do is keep doing the same thing and not getting a different result, which we all know is, I think it was Einstein or one of those people. That's the first sign of madness. But we sort of men go, but it should work. It's logical, So, and then they keep, doing the same thing, and their woman moves further away from them. So I think that's the pattern. So you're sort of like, if you're listening to this and go, right, the truth is, maybe I do run a bit of a red pattern here, and I don't understand what the green world is, because nobody ever taught me. And is it true that the Western world and the way we've come to live has made me, use more of that part of me, which is not the natural me, that's for emergencies only, and so could that be the reason that my relationships are challenged? Now, if you buy into that, then fine. Look, let's get some education going so that you can learn how to be more, we call it the natural you, because nature made women like women and men like men. This whole craziness of saying we're the same, look, I would absolutely say, when it comes to wages, I'm going, we deserve the same wages. And the whole feminist movement, feminine and feminist, two different things, yeah. You know, started in the Ford factory where the women sort of gone, hold on a minute, you know, we work as hard as they do, sewing these seats together. You know, they do engines, we do seats. You know, why are we not being paid the same? I'm completely agreeing with that. So it's not, you know, that's only fair. But I think there's this sort of the feminine. I always go, feminist is not feminine. In fact, it's sort of the opposite. It's more women fighting for their rights, which they then use inadvertently because they're a bit stressed that it's not fair. And then they tend to use their more masculine energy to have the fight. But it's not working. So this is where I think, look, if you can buy into that and go, right, let me get educated here, because, you know, a calmer, happier, more fulfilled, loving life is on the other side of learning how to do the opposite to that.
Yes. And actually, just like the way you said that, because a calmer, more fulfilled, more what we are calling green, which is, you know, you're you know, trusting to life, and you know, you're taking action, but you're doing it in a way that isn't like stressful or like running adrenaline, actually means that you will be in your natural style because you're not in that space. And so just coming on to men, almost, you know, the same analogy you're going to use is that when a man is in a good space, he's in his natural masculine energy. And obviously what we teach, which if we get time and you want us to, we can talk more about healthy masculine, healthy feminine energy. But what happens when someone's in a stress state, someone is in an adrenalized state, someone is in fight or flight, or in, like, you know, everyday rat race, as they call it, then the only place that men go is they will go in funny enough, similar sort of, well, we reckon it's more like 10% of men will go macho, which means that they will use their masculine energy to be, you know, maybe verbally, maybe even physically try and dominate, sort of kind of be in an aggressive state, which of course is dreadful for women. Or the 90% we reckon about roughly go into a more feminine place, because this is like how they came up with like new man and what do they call it, metrosexual man and all that beyond that, I think now. Yeah, well, I think we probably moved to all sorts of different things, but like that whole being more feminine, which is being more you know, like defer to the woman in the relationship. So it basically, and you hear it, we've heard it for years. Men will go, I just need a strong woman because I'm not strong enough. And that's a belief that they have because some life's not working well for them. And so they see a woman who's really strong and possibly in her masculine. And the difficulty is that we don't always show up like that. So you'll have, you know, lots of women who will look very feminine, but they're actually, they're very much, you know, on task, as it were, left-brained on task. And then men who will look, you know, masculine, but they're much more, you know, letting go of taking charge of anything there. And the biggest thing that we hear, of course, is women go, well, you know, if I didn't do it, he'd never do it. And so I have to do everything. And so that's why I'm exhausted, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, well, she never gives me a chance because she's always done it before I've even got a chance. And a lot of the time, funny enough, something that I've noticed, you know, over the years, is many women have taught themselves to be very fast paced.
Yes.
In which case, funny enough, men who go into a more feminine space go into this sort of, oh, it's just easier. Just let her do it. Let her make the decisions. Let her do the money. Let her decide where we go on holiday. Let her, which is actually a man doing something which is not natural to him at all, which is just to be the one that's just the follower, as it were, the sort of, you know, the passive person. And we see this, as we said, in like 80% of situations where, you know, the man is not showing up in a good way. And girls, I always like to say this, because you know, when we're very bad at picking relationships, we take more care about buying a house, buying a car than we do about getting into a relationship. That's, you know, a fact. People go, well, we sort of met and we fancied each other and yeah, we finished up together kind of thing. Whereas actually, if you are more selective, shall we say, and you look at the way the person lives their life, because the likelihood, unless they have some massive wake-up call where they might come to somebody like us or you, Amy, and they get a big wake-up call and they go, I have to change the way I behave. Most people, when you're selecting, is that they don't notice how that person's living, and the way that person's living is going to be how they're going to live. You know, we've had all sorts of examples, like anything from, you know, how they, you know, whether they're, you know, effective in their job or their business, or whether they're, you know, like fitness and health, or whether they are even untidy or tidy. I mean, just like, you know, we've had everything from people saying, I don't know whether to stay with my my partner because we put the things in the dishwasher. You know, he puts knives downwards and I put them upwards. Or where he likes the window open at night, I like it closed. I mean, you would not believe it. But those are silly examples. But in most cases, what's happening is because people are living in not a good space in themselves, they're not able to really operate in their natural, loving, you know, calm way where they can really connect. And it's a loving, beautiful connection between two human beings. What they're getting is they're giving each other the worst version of themselves. And therefore, everything, and the first thing that's normally affected is intimacy, because there's some sort of, you know, either it's non-existent or it's one person wants to do things the other one person doing. So there's so many bad, you know, things happen because of intimate relationships not working. You know, the children are affected. Often the rest of your life's affected. People don't function very well, you know, money-wise and fit, you know, health-wise and everything. So we just have always stuck to these two main things to say, look, hard as this might be, you know, we were kind of like, we're not for the faint-hearted. We're not going to tell you, oh, you must go on a date night once a week and all that. That's, you know, not what we teach. We go, look, you know, you've got to get educated about why this is happening the way it's happening and how you could turn it all around very, very easily, especially, you know, if you're both committed and you're not going to keep reminding each other. You know, we have that with couples, you know, they're with us and they're both realizing they've got to make changes, and change is not easy, you know. Then their partner keeps going, aren't you supposed to do that every day? Blah, 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 you know, and all of a sudden it starts all again, which is why it's much easier to judge someone else than it is to actually look at yourself.
Yeah. So I do think there's a bit of school science that people may remember doing, just for the, we call it the pink and the blue. So, you know, we've got the red and the green on the one hand. Are you in the red in stress in your head, you know, reactive, let's call it that? And then, or are you in the green, which is calm, like the still wine, and able to cope with the world in a different way?
Yeah,
because
emotionally healthy.
You're in control of your inner world. You know, are we green or are we red? If we're red, we need to get some help to how to be green. And if we understand that bit, you know, am I as a man in the blue and am as a girl in the pink? So have we got the pink and the blue the right way round as well?
Am I in my natural state?
Yeah. Now, when we're in the red, it's almost impossible, because you're in emergency mode, to have the pink and the blue the right way round. And little school bit of science that we probably all did, which is when we played with magnets. So it's sort of said that, you know, our polarity that we have between us as men and women is, when a man is in his healthy green masculine, he is attracted to a healthy green feminine woman. So that's like putting the correct poles together. The magnets attract each other. But modern world has left us with the magnets the wrong way round. So men are basically, you know, let's say 90% of men that come to us, they are running a feminine pattern with absolutely zero idea that's what they're doing. And so they then attract more women that are doing the opposite.
So
they sort of from a magnet viewpoint, they repel each other
eventually.
So there's that gap that grows, that doesn't matter what you do, you've got the poles round the wrong way. So it might seem okay to start with, and you can force them together, but they're basically, you're fated to fail if you don't understand and know this. So there are sort of two key things. Men, are you being solidly in the green, and are you a solid blue guy who knows exactly how to operate? And girls, are you in the green, and are you being, a healthy, not a Barbie girl pink, because that's, that Barbie thing's a pain in the ass, but because it implies that's feminine, but that, like, girls, doing blue stuff is not feminine. So this is, we're coming back to nature is a good way to look at it. I think humans on so many fronts have gone away from nature, and there is always a cost to that. And in relationships, that cost is the gap growing between you, which is either you're living with a gap and you're unhappy, at whatever degree the gap is, or you get to breaking point where the gap now, I always say, when you get to a point where you believe you're better off going than staying, that's when you go to the lawyer and get a divorce.
And the most likely thing that happens then is you go and do it again, and it might look different. It might look different, but when you get down to the bottom of it, it's not. It's and then you've got more pain and more disruption. And then obviously, as we said earlier, we work with couples where there's blended families, children from previous marriages, there's ex-partners, there's grandparents, there's, it's a complex situation. But I just was interviewed once on the BBC, and I only had 5 minutes, and I gave them like a 2-minute version of what we've just talked about, and the interviewer lady was a little bit was a bit left wing for me, and she just said, so what you're saying, Nicki Vee, is that women should be passive and submissive. Passive and submissive. And I couldn't think. I thought, well, how can I answer this in like 10 seconds or something? And I just went, do I sound passive and submissive? Sort of like, look, I'm a great example. I ran a big company. I was very masculine. I was stressed to hell, and I was destroying relationships consistently. And then all of a sudden I realized, first of all, I wasn't doing what I was really on the planet to do. I was just doing stuff to earn money. And was like at this ambition to just get better, higher and higher, and it was just not fulfilling me. And then to learn how to be more my true self, and to then find that what came along very very easily was someone who was having a great life as a really a great man. So we look, we're not perfect, because people say, would you ever argue? Yeah, of course we argue, because what happens is your old habits or your old, something triggers you, and you go back into your old pattern. But we're pretty good at, and we've got lots of tools that we share with people, which is, what do you do? Like, we've got because we said to you that we kind of retired, is we decided that we wanted to leave something for our for when we're not here.
It's a legacy.
Legacy. So we've actually put everything that we've ever taught. I mean, and that is a lot, because we used to do week-long events, 5-day events. We used to have a retreat of our own and stuff. We've put it all onto training videos, right? And just like, we just went so that people can just have all that information. And in that, the only reason we're telling you about that is to say that, we literally would talk, how do couples deal with it when they are really stretched for money? How do they handle it when there is, lack of intimacy, or there's infidelity, or one partner, has their family interfering all the time, and how do they parent well? And we just went, look, we just know that once you get these we call them now foundational tools, once you get that right together, then you can have an impact on the whole of your life, and everything can be improved. And it's possible, even if it's been dreadful. We've got clients who we talk to that we've worked with over the years. And yes, like us, they, you know, they have their moments. And then we've made like a tool where we go, and we coach so many people to have a conversation after they've had a row. We've got one thing called rows, fights, and fallouts. And we've made this thing, and we've coached so many people that we wrote a script. And now,
oh wow, I love that.
A little ebook that goes like, if you've had a row and you've had a fallout, this is the way to have a conversation. And of course, so many people want to put extra things in, like, well, when you did that
from 1982, I remember.
Yeah, exactly. So we did that. So what we were very happy, you know, to feel that our teaching, which is, you know, we're not the only people that teach masculine and feminine, because there is people that have also that philosophy, but we're the only people that really put those two things together, like what we call personal and in some ways spiritual development as well. Where you're going with the best version of you, mind, body, spirit, you know, and that you can actually turn things around very quickly if you're open to it, you know.
Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, what sort of questions do you think you're...
So I'm glad you kind of touched on the feminist kind of movement. So I'm obviously, I deal a lot with evolution because our brains haven't changed since the modern world, and we are hardwired to a degree, and especially as men and women. I see a lot of women that have they're single, but they've gone very masculine. Yeah. As in, I don't need a man, I can do everything. They've literally took over that kind of role, and you can see it in their face and what they're doing. They are purely stressed out, and that seems quite big at the moment. Yeah. But then you also see women as well that I talk to that are in relationships that have gone in like the fixer mode. So they've got with somebody they possibly wouldn't have, you know, they don't agree with the habits or something, but they've been aware of one, but they've gone into the relationship going, I can sort this out, I can fix it.
Yeah. The thing they say is he's got potential.
Yes.
Right thing.
That never ends well, does it?
Oh, well, it can't. You know, it's like the wrong formula. You know?
I'll change him.
Yeah.
I'll make it better.
Actually, you know, we did make this program, another program which we made really for single women, because before Nicki, you know, well, I always say I found her. Before I found her, then basically she made all the mistakes, but then she went on this journey to discover what she was doing, and I was doing the same, but you know, in man world, yeah. But obviously, men are less open to talk about that. I mean, it's very difficult. We've looked to help men on that front. There's a couple of very well, one particular guy who's helped a lot of guys. Obviously, Paul Mort is another guy who's helped a lot of guys man up a bit, you know, in a healthy way.
And be healthy in a relationship.
So he's great. There's another guy called Sasha Daygame. He's a very interesting guy. He used to do some not good stuff to start with, but it's ended up
like manipulation.
Yeah,
stuff,
that was
but not now, much more spiritual.
But I think, you know, we set about, you know, going to Nicki. So what did you do on your journey so that, because look, if it's true that, you know, you look at your life and say your life is a reflection of your inner world, your beliefs, your, you know, chemistry, your emotions, you know, everything that you're experiencing is you've created it, is a good way to look at it. So a good question is always to go, so on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being my life is the perfect, it's amazing, I couldn't have it any better, and 0 is, to be honest, it's a complete nightmare right now. What score would you give your life? It's a really good thing to just, you know, if you're watching this now, just go, yeah, so what number would I give it? Now, unless you give it a 10, few people give it a 10, very few. You've got a gap between your number that you've just chosen and 10. And so a way to, you know, look at how you can get things better is to go, I need to learn what's in my gap. Because and I need to look at what I believe, because what I believe is giving me, you know, this experience that has given me this gap. So if you're open to looking the gap, then, and you're single, we created this program for single girls called Let Him Find You. And in it, Nicki shares these key points that she did so that she learned what was in her gap, put it simply. And I have to say, the success rate on that program is unbelievable. Again, we don't do it sort of so much nowadays, but women really get it when they start to see what they're doing that's not working and start to understand what's in their gap. So I think that's a really good way to look at it. And actually, we sort of say, if you get yourself as a woman and you're single in a very healthy place, the right men are then attracted to you. To think of the magnet. Once the right magnetic attraction happens automatically. You don't have to be on a dating site. In fact, we've got a couple of women on it at the moment. They both come off of dating sites because dating sites,
they're going actually realizing that I'm on the hunt. I'm trying to find a man, and actually if I put the same kind of effort into just making sure I'm doing great and my life is where I want it to be, and then waiting, just being nicely waiting for the right man to find her. And it was interesting when you were just talking about that, I was just remembering, because obviously I'm saying and making a bit of a joke about it, which is not, it's exactly where I was totally left brain. Every relationship I got into, I was trying to fix things for them, and I was the breadwinner in a couple of them, and just, it wasn't until I took I can even remember the moment it happened. I was sat on the stairs and my relationship had broken down again. And, most of the time I'd left, but this was actually where someone had left me because I was just so, dominating really, and I suddenly realized it's me. I'm the problem. And therefore, I look back and saw that I would look at a guy and go, how can I make him great? He'd say to me, oh, I've got this business. And I'd go, oh, like, I'll tell you what I'd do, and let me help you do that. And, and to just be really sort of in charge of the whole relationship. And it was only when I really realized that and went, look, whilst I always thought they were the problem, I realized that I was the problem. And that I actually had a conversation with my ex-husband where I'd always, I can remember saying to my friends, oh, you never guess what he's done now, all that. And I actually went and had a conversation with him, and I just said the words, I just want to say to you that I'm sorry, because I know some of the ways I behaved were not great for you.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he went, no, you've got nothing to be sorry about. And I went, well, I do. He went, no. And then he started saying, I'm sorry that I did this, this, and this. And he'd never said he was sorry before. As far as he was concerned, everything he did, it was justified. And I thought, what, it was so big. And then I just put all my attention to being, in a great place, as Tony said, finding that gap. And my gap was, health and fitness, and just being more social, not so work orientated, and especially as being in a more feminine space in the way that I live my life, and giving more time to my family and things like that. And I remember being halfway through this year, because I actually was with a personal development group, and I shared with people that I was, on this journey. And I said, well, actually, I'd really like to be married by the end of the year, because I actually love being married. It's my thing, I like that level of commitment, and this was about September or something, or no, August. And I said, and I told some people, and they went, oh, I didn't even know you were dating. And I said, well, I'm not. But, I believe that if I just show up and do things that I love doing, which was traveling and just going to a load of personal development and stuff that a great man will find me. And come September, he did. And we got married by December. So I was married by the end of the year, which is a very cheesy part of the story, which I won't bore you with.
That's amazing.
But the whole Let Him Find You was based on that, which is that it's not about hunting, it's not about trying to find a man, it's about finding you, really. It's about finding the real you. And when the real you shows up, oh my God, is life more simple? Oh my God, is life more relaxed? and then you find someone else doing the same, and it's like, well, first of all, you know, if there's any single ladies listening, you'll definitely know from that state when it's not right, because you might attract men anyway, or attract partners anyway, but you'll know when it's right. And as soon as it's right, you know, you can tell, because that person's living their life in the same way. And you know, we've just well, we've loved the journey of helping people. It's just been so fulfilling. And people come to us. We had a phone call last night, actually, with a guy, and they think they're the first person telling us their inner and we go, look, you don't have to tell us anything, but if it feels better for you to tell us, then do.
It's like we're all, you know, humans out there are all making the same mistakes.
Yeah.
Basically don't know they don't know what they don't know, because they, as I said at the beginning, they've never had an education on this. So that's why we actually call our programs, very long-winded, the Couples Intimate Relationship Education Program. But it is that, you know, it's absolutely,
it does what it says on the tin, right? So people know
absolutely.
So Amy, it's very congruent with your way, because you were just saying about the women that you were talking about. I'm going to be very brave now, because I'm talking to a brain expert.
Yes,
right?
yes.
I've got my old, you know, learning about left brain, right brain, and I think it's really sad that when women feel like they have to live in their left brain, and they're not aware that there's this whole part of them, the right brain, which is obviously the more feminine, and also that lovely story, that lovely thing, which I'm probably going to get it wrong, is that, you know, our corpus callosums, our passageways between left and right are so much bigger than men's. I love that story. And the fact that a real feminine woman, you know, because a lot of women, they're frightened that they're going to lose themselves in a relationship, because that's been their pattern. Whereas actually, if you stop trying to be in your left brain and be logic and fix everything and just blah, 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 and you recognize that you're a woman, so you're going to go between the two, and you're going to be, you know, you're going to be changeable, and it's the time of the month, and you're going to be emotional sometimes, and all those sorts of things, which women, when they're in the masculine, don't have any time, you know, they don't do that. And I went, my goodness me, no wonder I feel so much better now, because I feel like I am completely me, and I've met someone who's completely him, and he likes me the way I am, and I love him, you know, exactly as he is. And that's, if you like, the ultimate, isn't it? You know, we used to call our programs the ultimate intimate relationship. And then we got too many women to those programs, so we called it love, sex and intimacy, and then we got 50-50. But it was like, just to know what a really great relationship sounds like and feels like, you know, gives people some kind of well, belief, but also if they believe that's too far, just to give them these 2 steps that we talked about.
Yeah, you have to find them. It's a little bit like, I say, it's a bit like a pendulum as well. So when you first learn it, you know, you're sort of over here, and then you have a go, and then you swing it and you go too far the other way, because you're not really sure what that looks like, you know. It's, and you're very uncertain to start with as to what that's like, because you've always operated from this position. But, you know, look, you know, you got to get it wrong to get it right. So that's why we actually say this is not something you can fix in 5 minutes, you know. As, you know, Cosmopolitan asked us once to, you know, write a 2-page article, centre page spread. We've done many magazines, many newspapers, but, you know, to get to 2 pages in Cosmopolitan, but then they wanted to be dictatorial. Because they said, we want you to write it like this. You know, the only thing they didn't want is, they wanted us to write little bits, and they wanted us to write top tips. And we were very honest with them and said, look, honestly, we could give you 10 top tips, which is what they wanted, but I promise you they don't work. Anyway, we had an agent at the time, and the agent said, look, don't argue with them, because they won't do it. And it's like 2 pages in Cosmopolitan, you got to be kidding. That is worth gold dust, you know. So I remember in the end doing the top 10 tips. And then one day a woman wrote in to them, and they forwarded what she wrote in. She said, I tried tip number 4 and it didn't work. And we're going, well, we've not told you that it doesn't work. you know, this is like a bit of a journey of learning. In fact, when you're on our programs, we sort of, and it's a bit off-putting for some people, but you know, we go, we'd rather be honest. And the truth is, you know, well, people asked us, how long did it take you to not only learn intellectually what's in your gap, because you can do that quite quick, and you might have learned some things just listening now and go, oh my God, I can see my gap and I can see a bit of what's in the gap. But to close the gap is a journey, and it took us, we always say, between a year to 18 months before we sort of closed that gap, and we're now operating and living, like we've said, the more natural us. So we always say, look, you know, if you're on one of our programs, honestly, just allow a year. I mean, you look, you might go quicker, but you know, let's just put aside a whole year of your life where, you know, come the end of the year, you're going to be living in this way that's much more calm. Your relationship will be much calmer, unless you want to fight, you know, because some people go, oh, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. Well, how is your way working? You know, your way's not working. You know? So you've got to test something else out. You know, logically, and the way we've been taught, it might seem that that's not making sense. So you have to try it on. I always go, it's a bit like going in the clothes shop and you pick half a dozen things, put 5 of them back and buy the one thing that you normally forget. Thing you tried on first, I would say. But you know, you got to try it on and see what fits for you. It's not a one size fits all, and that's why it's going to take a bit of time. You got to find you, the natural, real you, the green you, in this time that you need to put aside to learn this. You can't just intellectually know it and think that you're done. You know, because there's lots of people in personal development who intellectually know it but still live exactly the same life before they spent all their money on personal development. So
we've got one saying that we always used, which I think really sort of sums it up as well, is, as we said, you know, the sad thing about it is the biggest thing that goes wrong in intimate relationships is the intimacy, and we call intimacy connection. You know, intimacy does not mean sex. It means, well, it can be a physical intimacy, but it can also be just connection between you. And we always give these people this little saying, which means really what everything we've covered today, which is whatever happens outside the bedroom will happen inside the bedroom. In other words, if you're not getting on because you're not in your natural style, or you're adrenalized, or you're in fight or flight, whatever, then you'll be like that in the bedroom, and that's never sustainable. It's either not happening, you know, and you've got no intimate connection, or it's happening, but one of you's needs are being met and the other ones aren't, or blah, blah, blah. You know, it's a lot of big subject. But, you know, if you think about what I think we've said, it's about how do you live your life, not how do you fix your relationship. This is how do you live your life as an individual, as a man and a woman, and how does that impact your partner and your family and how you live your life is going to reflect in how much intimacy you have in your relationship. And that's what people get into a relationship for. They want a partner who they can feel connected to, who they can have as their intimate partner, who they can feel is like the closest person to them. And of course that can't happen if we're not in a good space in themselves.
We get invited to quite a few weddings, thankfully, people we've helped along the way, which is
bless you, that was so nice.
Wedding.
And then I love listening to the vows, you know, because people say all these beautiful, loving things, you know, and then you go, well, you know, you're committing a lifetime generally to live what you've just written down, and people aren't, you know. I mean, I encourage you, if you're not doing well, get your wedding vows out and go, you know, what did I say? What did I say? Because we, you know, fluffed it all up in a lovely little thing, and then we're not doing our part. You know,
we're not doing our part, and we're also often not looking at our partner who might have been triggered and doing an old behavior over time, and we're not understanding that that's natural. We're going, well, you know, I'm not doing that. He or she is doing that. And of course now we're in blame and judgment and of course nothing. And then we've got to go through, you know, we've gone through lots of forgiveness processes with people, and it is really because we go, look, the person who's suffering the most is the individual who's judging. You are angry about your partner. Well, guess who's being affected by anger? You first, and yes,
Yeah.
partner. So I think, we're always saying, look, we have to in some of our exercises, and then we go, well, look, you've got to cut each other a bit of slack, because look how, people will say, well, we've been married 20 years, or we've been married 15 years, or even more, or whatever. And we go, so it's taken you this long to create the habit between you two.
Wow.
Where you're asking help, and you're trying to get a top tip.
I was about to say that's it. They spent years building the habit and expect it to disappear in 5 minutes. That goes with everybody, doesn't it?
There isn't an appeal, I'm afraid, for this.
No.
Anyway,
good.
Trust that's been
So I
useful.
think I don't know whether. Oh, yes, just over an hour.
That's been absolutely amazing. I completely agree with everything that you've just said, and I think society's biggest problem that leads to mental health as well is that we've grown this band of really strong women, that's girl power and all that, but then we've also forced the men to become more feminine over time as well, so it's completely out of balance. And now you've explained it in a relationship way, it completely makes sense.
It's nobody's fault.
It isn't.
I don't think women have made men like that, and I don't think men have made women like that. It's his society. We've got this lovely new 4-letter word, woke, and you go, look, we created that somehow collectively, without blame. Humans are going along a path, but it doesn't work that well. We sort of force ourselves into these sets of beliefs and strategies and things that, fine if they work. I always say, look, if they're heading towards nature, they're more likely to work than if they're heading away from nature. And I just go, a lot of this is going in the wrong direction. Logically, it makes sense, but we are beings from a natural world. And I think we've just forgotten that, really. Which
that's so important.
But actually, if you're not living a 10 out of 10 life, I guarantee you're not living a more natural way, even though we're living in the 21st century. I mean, it is just this move away from how we were designed, really. It's given us a lot of pain, which we don't know, we don't realise, because nobody, we've been educated over here when actually we need to go a bit more the other way. But that doesn't matter. People have accused us of being old-fashioned. So you sounded like the 1950s, and I'm going, well, not really. We're much older than that, because human beings were not built, either in the 1950s or the 2020s, like we are living. We were born to live a different way.
Yeah, we say we go back to caveman times.
Yeah. So, do you know what? So we should. I think if we went actually put us back there, we'd all really struggle. We'll be so confused about it because of that far removed. It's unbelievable. So people that want to listen to your trainings, have a look at your programs, where can they find you?
So look, it's very simple. It's tonyandnickivee.com. See, Tony for Tony, not the I, that's girly, or Italian. And then so you have to do the whole AND. And then Nicki is NICKI. So NICKI for Nicki. And then our surname is VEE. So tonyandnickivee.com. So that's nice and easy.
And there's loads of stuff on there.
There's a lot of free stuff. If you go to the store, there's we have done a document called the top 10 things that go wrong in relationships. So that's something you can go through and go, I'm doing that, God, I'm doing that as well. There's another one which I think, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a document which sort of like, once you've come up with your number, it sort of says, right, if you're that number, you chose the number, this is what your relationship's going to look like. The love zones. It's called the love zones. And actually,
it's whether you're in emergency or danger,
whether you're in the uncave zone,
or whether you're in the
love zone. So and that's really useful. It's really useful to identify where you are, because you're sort of identifying your gap then, and then we can help you from there.
Yeah.
If you're single, girl, you know, drop us an email, really, because we don't have that on a website. We still do that on a one-to-one basis. So
Yeah,
if
on Facebook, Nicki Vee.
Facebook,
Yeah.
Email
Tony at tonyandnickivee.com.
It's easy.
And then
just drop us an email. But there's loads on there, and there's all sorts of little tools that, you know, people can use. And then on all our little ebook, we've got ebooks galore and things like that. We've got recordings,
we've got low cost stuff, and then we've
Yeah.
got, if you want help, you know,
if you want coaching or
then we
whatever.
do that too.
And there's a little brochure that just tells you everything, and it tells you the prices and everything, so nothing is hidden.
Yeah.
You know.
I love you, Per. You've been absolutely amazing, guest.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us. As you can see, we love doing this. We love sharing with more people's audiences, so that, you know, that the planet is happier. You know, all the people on the planet are happier.
You're both leading by example, which is great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So anybody that's enjoyed the podcast, make sure you go and check all the links out. I will pop them on YouTube as well, and on Spotify. It's been absolutely great talking to you both.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for letting us in.
Keep doing this amazing podcast, because it's really valuable for people.
Brilliant.
Thank you.